item.
Chris is going to stay.
Yeah, I just,
He's just having so much fun.
where's my agenda? You didn't take my agenda, did you?
You're only going to go to early
I have the minutes, I don't have my agenda. Oh, here it is, it's right on the top here. I don't know why it's clipped on there, but it's clipped.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
I think there's only two things.
Okay, next is old business. Michael Moriello, attorney for Kingstonian Development, LLC, 9-21 North Front Street, and 51 Schwenk Drive, Kingston, New York, Zone C2/partial mixed-use overlay district, Ward 2. The applicant has submitted a letter, it's in your packet, dated November 26th, 2019, indicating there's an area variance addendum. We had a presentation previously on the Kingstonian. This is an area variance addendum and request to be on the board. The applicant has submitted an addendum to the previous area variances that were presented at the October 10th, 2019 ZBA meeting. Landscaping, parking, setbacks, flood zone. Before we move forward on this is going to be before us for a while. I'd like to just make sure of the citing of the sections of the zoning to make sure we're on the same page on this, because I had some questions before you make your presentation. The first is in your letter, landscaping, zoning law section 40540A2, which board members could also help me with this. I believe that is accurate. I want to make sure these citings are accurate so that we're not...
Seriously? Okay.
Huh?
All right.
40540A. I had these marked. Okay, 40A, the landscape strip shall be provided. Number 2, landscape strip shall be provided along all property lines of multifamily non-residential uses. That's the section you're going to seek a variance on.
Correct.
Okay. The next is setbacks, which is footnote number 11 for the C in the lot and bulk requirements in the back. And that's footnote 11, which in C2,
What are you talking about now?
back in the lot and bulk for setbacks, the lot and bulk
The
requirement.
density control schedule?
Yes. Footnote number 11, no side or rear yard is required, but if provided, they must be at least 6 feet, and if a rear yard is contiguous to a residential district, it must be at least 10 feet in the C2. That's the section that you're looking for a variance.
Correct. That's correct.
All right, the next one is, as far as I'm concerned, going to be the most complex. And that's the stair towers within the flood zone, zoning law section 40526D. In my book, 26D is definitions, and there's an alphabetical list
Area shallow flooding.
So which particular
Flood
part
hazard.
of 26D are you seeking an variance from? There's about 10 different definitions
The
here.
area variance that we need is for the stair towers themselves, which are technically located in the flood zone. They're not in the floodway, but they're in the flood zone.
But-
And they need to, that's what needs the variance. Now, the reason that I may have, and I think that other section that's there
The other, well, we'll get to that.
should be that.
Mr.
But I've referred to the definition section because we may need to go to the definitions
But
you
you're
know.
asking for a variance of all the definitions,
Yeah, but
including variance.
Yeah.
So you're requesting, by stating it that way, you're requesting a variance from all those definitions, and you're requesting a variance from the meaning of variance.
Hold on one
That
second.
is-
I don't think that's what he intends.
Oh, I know, obviously, but that's what that's the way it's written. That's why.
So would it be the area of special flood hazard that you're referring to?
Correct.
So I thought,
So specifically, 26D is the area of special flood hazard. Well, since we're talking about that, what zone is this in? Do you know?
Well,
It's like about 6 different zones listed here.
it's in the flood zone itself under your zoning law. So that's where we went to get the variance criteria because
specific area, what zoning is it under? Is
It's,
it C2, C?
No, Zone A, AE, AH, AO, A99, like there's 8 different, 10 different.
that I don't know, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
I think that's important to know
Okay.
because there's very specific regulations depending on the zone that it's in, the flood zone that it's in. And there's allegedly a map somewhere
Yes.
that lists
Yep.
these areas.
FEMA maps have those.
So we need to know what specific area it is because this particular section of zoning is very complex. It refers to particular zones of flooding, regulations, local administrators, so we need...
Chris will get that, he'll have that
We'll
for me,
need-
right, Chris?
so-
Yeah, yeah.
The
That's what I
particular
think it
section
is.
of
But I don't want to
405,
say that.
just so I'm correct, 405-26D is area of special flood hazard. Remind me to ask you later how you knew that.
I'm looking at it right here.
Well, there's 10 other definitions here.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I
Now, but
I
that's-
knew
that's
that
it.
because of
I-
my
no,
real
I'm
estate
very-
background.
I'm very
That's-
impressed that you knew that. Area of special flood hazard, that's what you're specific. Unfortunately, there's not numbers, so in the future, could you just, when you cite 405, the variance for 405-26 parentheses D,
Yeah,
could you also just write
absolutely.
area of special flood hazard so we know what we're talking about?
We will, Mr.
So
Chairman.
the other part of that is 405-26G. 4, non-residential structures and within zones, this is why I asked, within zones, A is within zones A1-A30, AE, and AH, and also Zone A, then the lowest floor, including basement or cellar, has to be elevated to or above 2 feet above the base flood.
Correct.
If it's not in one of those zones, then another section is going to be applicable.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that it's in AE, but I don't want to say that. When I went over the variance criteria with Dennis Larios, this is what we cited to, but I didn't specifically ask him if it was AE. I'm thinking it's AE, but we'll make sure.
So
We'll make
in
sure.
the future,
Yeah,
when again you're referring to anything further variances, if
We
you
will.
could put, if that's what it is. And by the way, staff, Steve, I would like, oh, you looked it up? What is it? AE? It's A, it's not AE. Very good, Steve. Thank you. So we all learned something tonight. Thank you very much. Good job. So it's a Zone A, which is that included? Yes, we're in luck. It's included in that section number 4 of the 2 feet. All right? Now, I want to call your attention, Mr. Moriello and board, that there is a very specific area on the next page, H1 and H2,
That's all A.
that we
but
need to
part
follow
of it is coming down to
for
there,
a
which is A.
variance procedure. All right? These are very, very specific. Some of them are above my pay grade, so again, I'm going to need... I'm on the next page of, right after this section we're talking about, number 4, turn the page, and right here, variance procedure, H, 14 out of 16. Thank you.
Okay.
So H is a variance procedure for us, the appeals board, and conditions for variances also, I believe, would be needed to follow very strictly. So this isn't typical. It's very atypical. That's why I say this particular variance is going to need a lot of minds. And you seem to know your way around this, so you're going to be an integral part of it, Steve. Okay? But there is a very, very specific criteria for variance procedure in H1 and H2. And I'm assuming it applies to A, Zone A.
Are you gonna need an elevation certificate for that specific area?
Well, Dennis, I think Dennis we can certify to what the elevation, the base flood elevation is. We can certainly do that for the board. The intention, though, was not to raise the level of the land above that. These are very narrow areas of incursion, but we can get that.
I'm going to put this is my personal opinion, I'm going to put my cards right on the table. Out of all these variances, this absolutely is the most critical and most complex variance. And the number one reason why it is so important is its public safety. I don't think I need to emphasize that to anyone. We're talking about a flood zone, we're talking about people in staircases, in elevators, whatever. So we're going to need to pay very, in my opinion, again, very, very astute attention to this variance. To me, this isn't landscaping. Not that landscaping isn't important. This is not landscaping. This is not parking. This is public safety. Okay? Because I believe I was told when I asked, at what level is it? If it isn't 2 feet, I believe I was told it was at zero, ground zero. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, too, on the public safety issue, I will talk to Dennis, because when I met with Dennis, I said, what about if it floods? Dennis says that's not an issue, but I will have him
Please
put
pass-
that, I'll have him put it in writing,
Please
why
pass-
it's not an issue.
Please pass my message
I
on
will.
to Dennis. It is an issue.
I will.
And that doesn't mean it's not going to be approved.
Yeah.
It's just going to be an issue because there's about 5, 6, 7 pages here that I spent a good part of the afternoon trying to wade through. And
And there's no answer to that question.
what question is that?
If it's the public safety question, I realize that,
Oh,
too.
so-
You're 100% right. I will have Dennis address that, definitely.
Okay.
You
Just,
heard
that's
that.
why I'm doing this little
your
exercise.
partner.
That's why I'm doing, what's that? What'd you say?
He's Chris's partner. That's why I wanted
Is he
Chris
your
to stay here.
boss? Is he your boss?
No, no.
Okay, well, you can have an honest and free discussion with him then.
Lario says it's not a problem.
Show the board why it's not a problem.
I'm open.
I got it.
Okay, Now, parking, zoning law section 40534G.
Yeah, and it's not, Mr. Chairman, it's not even certain if we need an area variance for parking, but I didn't want to leave something, out.
Okay. My only question there is why is a G? I mean, what I'm assuming you're going, and you know what happens when you assume, but I'm assuming that you're going to invoke H for the waiver because you're within 400 feet of a municipal.
Yes, the
operated-
planning board can waive the requirement, and it's kind of a convoluted requirement because the zoning law requires, these vast parking areas and, all set up, but it wasn't, I think it's written without the idea that this in and of itself is a parking garage. It's not,
Now, who is going to own the garage? The city of Kingston or the developer?
No, the private developer will
All
own
right,
it.
so the language is if it's within 400 feet of a municipally operated off-street parking facility. So we'll let the planning board handle waivers, but, excuse me. But my question is, if you need a variance, again, I'm not telling you how to do your job, but I would believe that you need a variance from that section J that basically lists the number of spaces that are required for each room of the hotel, each apartment, and a calculation of how many parking spaces this particular development's going to use. I believe it's 143 units of apartments. If they were all single-bedroom apartments, that's 1.5 spaces per each apartment under J, and one per room with 32-room boutique. We need some kind of quantification as to what J would produce, and I would assume that would be, if you're not going to seek the waiver.
We'll provide that too.
That's the
Dennis is
variance.
working on that too.
Okay, so I would think that in the future, it should be G and J,
Okay.
all right? Just so we're all on the same page of this for the future. Also, while I'm thinking of it, and then I'll let you make your presentation, but I believe you mentioned somewhere in your letter that 7 units of affordable housing have been added to the building. I was under the impression it was 14.
There's 14 units total. There's 7 multifamily units that have been added to the top of the building.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear if somebody coughed.
There's 14 units of affordable housing that have been added in total. 7 units have been added to the top of the building, but they are not the affordable housing units. They are just multifamily units. The affordable housing is interspersed throughout the structure.
But F says, even with the additional 7 units of affordable housing added to the building. That's what your letter
Correct.
says under F.
It should not say affordable housing because not all those are affordable.
Even with the additional...
None of those are the affordable
Even with
units.
the additional 7 units,
Correct.
not of affordable...
Should say units of multifamily housing. That's
what?
correct. Of multifamily housing.
To be clear, how many units of affordable housing are there
14 total.
total?
Yeah.
So it should read multifamily.
And they have to,
instead.
by law, they have to be interspersed throughout the structure.
So it's 7, even with the additional 7 units of multifamily housing added to the building, the height of the structure will not exceed height limitations.
Correct.
Is that a correct sentence there?
That's correct.
Can I clarify something?
Sure.
Okay. With regard, just going back to the parking part of it, the numbers with regard to parking and the representations by the developer has been quite confusing. So going back to the parking, it would be really wonderful to clarify very specifically what the requirements are for the proposed development
Absolutely.
on the parking garage, so that we know exactly how many spaces are required under the code and how many spaces will then be left that could be considered to be used for municipal parking. And just...
And how much of a variance we're
Yeah,
gonna give.
and that would determine if there's any variance required with regard to parking. So those numbers, I would just love them to stop moving around and be hard and fast based
Yeah.
on our code.
Based
we-
on J, basically.
We will, what we'll do is, they've made a lot of statements about parking and considered it by the planning board at length, but what I'll have them do is I'll have Dennis and the applicant get together and provide an explanation of exactly how many parking spaces will be used for what and where that fits in under the code. We'll get an analysis that says that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
and I have that right here in a table.
Brian put it perfectly, but as far as I'm concerned, any parking variance is going to rely on J and the number that's produced
Correct.
versus what you can provide. That's the variance for parking. Okay, G is a nice paragraph, but it really doesn't mean anything to us, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of a variance.
Yes, and
J is the meat of the zoning code.
yeah, and like I said, we may actually ask for a waiver, but I didn't want to leave it out of the analysis here. So that would be a waiver from the planning board, so, but I didn't want to leave it out here.
I will let the planning board,
Yeah.
I have enough on my plate, I'll let the planning board handle
But
that one.
to your point, Tony, to your point, even when you apply for the waiver from the planning board, they need to know the specific number of spots you're asking to be waived.
Correct.
So the table that the two gentlemen requested would make sense, because it would also help with any future waiver you may need to ask for.
A good point. We will definitely provide that.
So, Mr. Moriello, that's the extent of, I hope I didn't take too much time, but
No,
I
it's all
think we
good.
now have a common ground and understanding of what this board will eventually use in determining variances for each of these items that is presented to us. As far as just one other, the landscaping, I don't want to leave that out. I think it would be very good to calculate, since I've read that a large portion of the boundaries are abut other buildings, so there's not going to be able to put the three,
Correct.
the strips in. I'd like to get personally a quantification. I guess the point of my whole speech tonight is quantification. I'd like to get quantification of how many feet is not going to be allowed, because of the proximity to the other building, not allowed to have landscaping, greenery. Maybe it'll be 300 square feet. And then part B of that is, I'd like to see, and I'm tipping my cards a little bit on the variance request, I'd like to see where 300 square feet is added somewhere where the green can be added. Okay, do you see the method to my madness a little bit?
Yes.
Since you make a very poignant case of how you cannot put the greenery, obviously you can't plant plants and brick, but still, if personally, again, my opinion, if I'm going to grant a variance, I'd like to see that amount of square footage somewhere else in the plaza or wherever, okay?
We'll
So
have Dennis calculate that
The
too.
next, well, he's the partner, he can do that one and Dennis can do the other, all right?
This is what you get when you don't show up. You get all the work dumped on you.
All right, I don't think it's unreasonable, I mean, that's...
No, not at all, not at all. It's a good request.
All right, so now you have the floor.
We don't have a big presentation because we really kind of made it at the last meeting, and then we did the analysis, if you will, but I think it's a very good point that we should quantify things much better. Our intention tonight was to just try and schedule a public hearing for the matter. That was the only thing we really wanted to try and do, is schedule a
For the
public
what?
hearing.
Schedule
A public hearing.
for the
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, which is required for the
Now,
area variance.
the only thing I will say about that, and the board can, as I wrote down here, the options, because I was told by Corporation Counsel that may come up. I have 3 options here, and it's the board's discretion. You direct me how. Set a date for the special public hearing on the Kingstonian. We could set the date now, but we don't have the room availability, needs to be checked. We could wait until the planning board decision to set the date, or make it for the next regular meeting. If someone else has another option,
I have a question.
question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of the applicant. With regard to the addendum,
Oh, okay.
did we cover, this was a modification or an addition to what was originally submitted for the variance, correct?
Yeah,
Did
supplement.
we
yeah.
cover all of the changes that are addressed in the addendum or additions?
Yes.
We did?
Yeah.
We covered all the variances of the
All right,
request.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure we got it.
Yeah, I was a little perplexed with addendum. I thought maybe there was another variance being added, but it's the same variances.
But with different-
With different,
Yeah.
Mr. Moriello provided much more
Detail.
detail and rationale for why the variances should be granted. So going back to my question on the date for the special public hearing, what do I hear from the board of those options? You want me to say them again, or
What is the planning board decision we're talking about?
the seeker?
Yeah, the planning board still has not made a determination of significance on seeker, so no board can act to grant any approval until that is done. So, but we can schedule public hearings. So there can't be a vote on a project, there can't be a permit issued, there can't be an approval, but there can be public hearings.
There can be a public hearing because we've had now 2 meetings, and your
Correct.
variances requests, your future variance requests and presentation are going to be the same. I'm assuming there's not going to be any additions, so...
That's correct, and the information that that the board is requesting tonight, we will have for that meeting.
For the
That's-
special
Yeah, we'll definitely
public
have that.
hearing.
And are we expecting a decision on secret from the planning board soon?
I have no idea what the planning board's doing.
All right.
May I ask a question? Just one
Yeah.
question? Just in regards to seeker, if they do a neg deck, would the applicant then have to work with the planning board to sort of make changes to the project to sort of
All
achieve
the-
a pause deck?
All that how seeker works, there's either a positive declaration, meaning that there's at least one significant
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I
impact on the
reversed
environment.
it. My question
Or there's
reversed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if there's a pause deck rendered, you cannot make that a neg deck. That, if it's a pause deck, that's what it is. It's a positive declaration. You
So-
can't mitigate it to a negative declaration.
So if there is a pause deck, and the developer then has to sort of change their plan, per se, any variance that we would have granted would be null?
We're not granting any variance
Okay.
until the planning board makes the
So,
seeker.
yeah,
This is for
correct.
purposes of a public
Well,
hearing.
I guess, Tony, my thinking is though that in terms of scheduling a public hearing, if people are coming to the public hearing to discuss these particular variances,
Yes.
but then if there is a
There may be other variances.
then it's sort of like that was a waste of everyone's time.
Well, if there's a...
That's
if-
my only concern.
Yeah, I don't think it would be a waste of anyone's time, and if there was,
Have much
yeah,
to do with the other.
Well,
Well,
I'm
there
just
may be
saying-
additional, what Owen is saying, I believe, is if there's a positive, then there may be other variances.
There could be other variances, or the
added.
plan could change, and then,
So you, okay.
That would be
so
my concern. That's my only concern.
Interpret for me, Owen, your position. What I'm reading is not to schedule special public hearing until the planning board has made their decision, which I think was one of my options, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, I guess then,
Until the
although
planning
I
board
would,
decision.
Although I am not a voter.
The three options was a public hearing on the Kingstonian, and set the date now, we don't know room availability, so if we set a date, we may not have a room. Wait until the planning board decision, then set the date, or make it for the next regular meeting.
yeah, I'm not a voting member tonight,
You can comment.
but my comment would be is that maybe we should wait for the planning board to make their seeker decision.
What is your feeling, Brian?
I have no problem. I wouldn't schedule a meeting if we don't know whether or not a room's available. That seems to make no sense. So I would have no problem just putting it on the schedule for next month as a public hearing. And if something changes with regard to a secret determination that requires additional variances, they'll come before us and we'll schedule another public hearing.
Another public
It's
hearing,
just,
yeah. Okay, so you would schedule it for the next public meeting. John?
I would table it until, I would table it until taken care of by the planning board.
You'd table until the
Yeah.
date, same date till the planning board. Mary?
I would table it to also.
Yeah, I agree, so, Ari? Oh, I'm sorry.
Same deal.
All right, well, four of us. Okay, so we're not going to set the date until the planning board makes their decision, and then I think it makes more sense, quite frankly, because then we know what variances we're dealing with if there's a negative or positive declaration. So, no date till planning board. All right, so, Mr. Moriello, Mr. Zell, any other thing you would like to add this evening?
No, that's it. That's
All
it.
right,
Thank you
well-
to the board.
Okay, thank you for, I think we accomplished a lot, even though it wasn't quite what it was supposed to be on either account, but, all right, so what I need,
Good night, Mike.
and please, we're going to need these, since we're going to have a motion, we're going to need these signed. On the Kingstonian, do I have a motion to set a table any decisions? We're tabling any decisions on variances for
I make a
future
motion.
meeting.
To table until the planning board.
And no, not set meeting, not set date until planning board. Let me just write it down. Well, I'm talking in the microphone.
But Eric can't hear you.
I'm talking, table the variance, the motion is to table the variances until future meeting. And not set a date until planning board acts.
And I make a motion.
And that's John. Second. Brian. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 5-0. All right, please don't leave until we sign these. All right, 127 Greenkill Avenue, obviously, we need a motion to table until next meeting. Yeah, thanks. Table until next meeting, motion. To that effect, please.
Yes.
John?
Second.
Mary, second. All in favor? Opposed? 5-0. Okay, we'll just stay seated here until everybody signs. I've got which one it is on the top. Kingstonian's on the top, and Greenkill's on the other. Is this your map, John? Your site
Yeah,
plan?
Yes, yes, yes.
Thanks, Brian.
Present.
The other ones I had forgotten in the house, I found them, said first.
Yes.
I think the longer that you put down the road, the less stuff on the list we're going to
Keep me posted.
Okay, thanks, John, for
And
everything.
have a good Christmas.
You too, gang. Enjoy wherever you're going, all right?
Yeah.
Because this makes no sense, because this is cardboard. biodegradable,
Motion to
that's not.
adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
John.
You know what I'm
Second,
saying?
Mary, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.